This is quite a special event for us. It's the inaugural session of our new educational project, Greenlit U, as in university. And it's an objective of ours to help creative people with business skills. We want to empower creatives by sharing some knowledge and getting some information and I say some skills outside your usual creative environment. So for those of you that don't know us, Greenlit is a crowdfunding platform. I think you've all been on the site and you've had a little look there. We're approaching our 3rd anniversary of operations. We launched in April 2019, and it's an eventful 3 years it's been. We're a crowdfunding platform. We only deal with creative work. We've done over 200 projects now, mostly in film, but we have a growing stage presence and also music projects, both live and recorded. We've raised very close to £1 million for our creatives. And when we started, people thought we were mad because we had Kickstarter and Indiegogo, all these crowdfunding platforms with massive resources. They were much more powerful and better equipped than us. And it was a big question mark and a lot of doubt as to whether we could pull something off differently. But we spotted there was something in the market that those big platforms are very much commoditized. Their main business is about products, creative stuff they all do, but it's kind of a sideline to them. It's not as central to what they do. They make their money on gadgets and on taco trucks and luggage and all those kind of things. But Greenlit is all about creative people. We are creative people. Everybody on the team has come from a creative background. We do what we do. I'm a filmmaker and an amateur musician. Phil, who you've just met, is a passionate and creative writer. I see Grace is on the meeting as well, a passionate and prolific theatre maker. Stay tuned to hear more of her shows she's got coming up. Some fantastic, funny stuff to be had there. So one of the things we realised is that there was a very definite gap in the market, and we're going to talk about what a market is throughout the course of this session this evening. It's all about doing something differently. With those big platforms, you're very definitely on your own. They operate a numbers game where it's in their interest to have as many projects/products as possible, because they don't really care whether an individual project fails or is successful. All they care about is aggregate. And like I've suggested, their main game is products. Whereas for us, it's about depth rather than breadth. People come to us because we're a creative community and we love creative people. We are passionate about helping people get their stuff out there, because I think a thing that makes us different is that we all know it's really hard. It's really hard to make something. And I'm not just talking in terms of practicality. I'm talking about in terms of being an artist and you're taking something from inside yourself and willing it into the world where it's never existed before. And that's hard. That's tough. So we thoroughly respect that. Yet there's more to it. And a lot of people come to us to place their crowdfunding projects without a lot of understanding of what has to go in it, what has to go into a campaign, what makes a good campaign, what makes an effective campaign. With those big platforms, you get so little in the way of resources. And a statistic that a lot of people don't necessarily realize when they embark on crowdfunding campaigns is that approximately 5% of your pledges will come via the platform. And that is true of Kickstarter, it's true of Indiegogo. We're slightly better, but 95% of the pledges and the support and the enthusiasm and the backing that you're going to get for your project is going to come from your own marketing efforts, your own outreach, your own promotion. And people don't realize that it's hard work. And again, it's every bit as challenging as creating something, because again, you're putting yourself out there into a place that's kind of uncomfortable. So we want to support the creatives, not just because we work with them, but because we want to support the community with knowledge. I mean, I'm a creative person. I'm a filmmaker, I'm an amateur musician, but I've also got an MBA, and people might look at us as, you know, stats guys or apprentice contestants or something like that. But for me, it's all about knowledge. Knowledge makes you powerful. Nobody's going to do stuff for you. Nobody's going to promote your work. Nobody's going to get yourself out there. So every little bit of knowledge you can bring to the game, and every little bit of knowledge we can help you bring to the game, is going to make you stronger. And that's what we're all about. So the theme of Greenlit U, Greenlit University, is going to be about empowering people. It's going to be about empowering you and empowering the community. We've got some upcoming sessions on branding. In a fortnight's time, Phil will be delivering one about branding and how you develop a brand for yourself as an artist and for your projects. We've got sessions on social media, on festival strategy and practically how to work with festivals. We've got a session coming up on tax credits, which is hugely important for the creative sector. So we're a little bit ignorant about how those things work. We've got some fantastic guest speakers coming in to talk about those things. Pitching, and we'll touch on pitching this evening. Again, it's a skill that you have to have very, very polished. You know, the better you can get at pitching, the better you're going to make your project. Marketing for creatives. Here we are, yes. And I don't even think I introduced myself. Peter Storey, CEO and the founder of Greenlit.com. Some of you may know me from round and about the same. For those of you I haven't yet met, lovely to meet you, fantastic. And thank you so much for joining, and hope we can continue that bond and do some stuff together in the future. We also have the privilege of Phil Melanson, who is our head of communications. They are a very experienced communicator, writer, marketer. It's fantastic to have Phil aboard the team, and fantastic to have Phil aboard kind of looking after the practicalities of this session this evening. And as I say, Phil will be delivering a session in a fortnight's time. We are looking to do a Greenlit U session once every 2 weeks. If they're successful, we're going to bring more. We hopefully will make them more frequent. We'd love to get up to one a week. So if you find this evening's session valuable, tell us, tell your friends, just kind of spread the word, because you know, it's like Jay-Z here. We're giving you $1 million worth of game for $9.99, and what could be better than that? This evening's session, this is kind of going to be the key question, actually. What is marketing? There's the key question, and it's probably not what you think it is. This evening's session is going to be less about practicalities. I mean, some of you may have signed up thinking about, you know, are we going to give you top tips on how to do advertising? All that's coming in future Greenlit U sessions. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about something that we found very powerful and very effective when creatives have been coming on a campaign and beginning a campaign with us. And it's about mindset, and it's about a way of thinking about marketing. And I really, really hope you'll find this positive and liberating and useful when you come to approach your creative project, whether that's a crowdfunding campaign or whether you're starting to sell that independently. Marketing is a whole world, and probably not what you think it is. So hopefully we'll open a few doors of perception tonight as well, rather than giving you a brief kind of how-to. Quick thank you to our partners and friends who helped us put the word out about this. Genera, the short film platform at generafilms.com. They offer funding, they offer a platform and community. Very, very friendly bunch. Please check out Genera. British Urban Film Festival. We love Buff. We love Buff. It is my pleasure and privilege to serve on the jury again. They've just announced their dates at the end of November at the Rich Mix here in Bethnal Green over the course of a week, the last week in November. That is going to be a fantastic scene. If you have a short film and you're thinking of submitting it, I think we're 10 days out from the early bird lower cost submission period ending. Get your stuff into Buff. I get to see most of it. I get to see most of the submissions. So looking forward to seeing what everybody out there's been working on as well. And finally, if you listen to the Filmmakers podcast, you'll know Giles and you'll know what a terrific independent filmmaking podcast it genuinely is. Every Tuesday, it is like a can of energy drink enthusiasm. People getting out there, making stuff, telling their stories. Probably the best podcast, probably the only podcast I listen to religiously. Go and subscribe. Check out also Giles's email newsletter, the wrap up. Every Sunday you'll get in your inbox a whole bunch of interesting reading material about indie filmmaking. You've got it. So, to begin, what is marketing? Let me ask the question another way. Why, as an artist, would I need to know about marketing, right? Why should that be a thing that's on my radar? I mean, look, these days, everybody walks around with a 4K camera, an edit suite, a recording studio. We've got these things, and we have ways of distributing via the internet all of those things that were previously owned by large corporations. We have the potential to all do them ourselves now. Technology has made the making and the distribution of creative work easier than it's ever been before. However, the problem now isn't really one of creation, and it's obviously you can go up your production values, and the more money and the better equipment you have, that's going to give you some incremental benefits. But the real challenge is in awareness, and it's about getting in front of people. It's about making people understand what you're doing as a creative subject. It's not as simple as having an influencer retweet you and going viral. That's a thing a lot of people come to us thinking is going to happen. It doesn't really work. Marketing is a process, and it is a mindset, and it is a work ethic. So this is kind of what we're going to try and bring you up to speed on over the course of this evening. Marketing is not an easy process. Importantly, marketing isn't comfortable. Very much an English thing, very much a class thing, very much a creative person thing. Because, the idea of selling yourself, as it were, doesn't sit easily with a lot of people. If you're creative, you're going to identify very, very strongly with what you've made, with your work. That is absolutely natural, because in the making of something, you're pouring yourself into it. This is what makes you an artist. This is the essence of being creative. So if people are looking at your stuff and they don't like it, or they're critical, or, possibly the worst thing of all is they're like, yeah, great, yeah. That kind of apathy can feel quite personal and quite wounding. It's particularly relevant to crowdfunding. A lot of people think crowdfunding is a lesser form of finance, that it is like begging or digital panhandling, is to borrow a phrase. And a lot of filmmakers take that on board. A lot of creatives take that on board, because if you're a little bit conscious, you can respond to that because it gives you an excuse to not kind of do it. That can lead you to miss out on a lot, because crowdfunding is not about raising money. It's about building a community, and it's about getting people on your creative wavelength. What is marketing? Well, you've got the slide up there. When I lecture at universities and film schools, and this is always the question that I open the room with, what is it, marketing? And you can see the top three answers that I always get back. It's advertising, it's selling, it's promotion. And you know, if I was on QI, that would be coming up on the screen behind me with big loud noise. And it's such a partial and ultimately unhelpful perspective to have if you regard marketing as being these three things, as being advertising, as being selling, and being promotion. They're components. We're about to see how they fit into the philosophy as a whole. As a creative, marketing is going to be about connecting with your audience. If you think about the word marketing, you might think of, you know, the stock market. You might think of the currency market. You might think of, you know, some apprentice contestants with you know, red braces or glasses or whatever. But in reality, you know, the market, you think about the original market, the Greek agora in Athens, and it was a place where people bought and sold, sure, but it was also the place, the home of civic engagement, where people had public meetings, they had protests, there were musicians, there was entertainment, there were jugglers, there were snake charmers. It was where people came together, and the buying and selling was kind of almost incidental to that. So first of all, reframe the word market to think of it as this space where you're going to meet people. How are you going to connect with them? That's going to be on an emotional basis. You can inform people, you can talk to people about what you're doing in a very dry sort of way. You know, you can talk about your influences, you can talk about what's inspired you as a creative, you can, you know, talk about the camera you used, you can talk about the chord changes or the melody or the rhythm that you use, and that's kind of interesting on a cerebral basis. But what it's not is an emotional connection, and emotions is what makes people buy. It's what makes people join your community and become engaged with your work, and by implication with you. There's a quote at the bottom there. Marketing is the social process by which individuals and organizations obtain what they need and want through creating and exchanging value with others. That's a quote from a guy called Philip Kotler, who was kind of the Orson Welles of marketing as an area of study, as an area of academic discipline from Harvard Business School. But what he's saying is absolutely correct, is that it's not just an exchange of money. There is a creation and exchange of value. People are going to get something out of your work. You're taking something to them. You are going to bring them joy or pain, or you're going to frighten them, or you're going to make them laugh. And that's something, and that exchange is really what it's all about. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff in film theory and in criticism, and, you know, what's known as reception theory, which suggests that something only exists and only has meaning when it begins to take shape in the mind of an audience. So what you intend as a creative can in many ways be secondary to what people build around it in their minds, because that's where it's going to exist. I think that's very, very important. To make them latch on to what you're saying. What can you say to make them feel? And how are you going to tell it? What's the grammar? What's the syntax? What are the methods of communication that you're going to use to communicate your story and to provoke any kind of emotional reaction in your audience? Any of the emotions that we've just talked about, how can we encourage their empathy? And that's the framing that marketing represents for a creative. This is the real reason that it's important, and this is the real reason that Greenlit exists, because right out there, the creative industries have always been managed and always been run by gatekeepers. You can see the stats on the screen. I'm not. It's painful. I'm not even going to read them out. Right. It's too painful for me to communicate how bad these stats are for the independent creative. But it's always been a comfortable arrangement. You know, you can take your work to the BFI and they'll put it on release for you, and they'll subsidize the release, and they'll pay for promotion, yada, yada, yada. Brilliant. All right. Okay. Knock yourself out. You know, you can go to Spotify, you can go to a record label. A record label is going to do your marketing for you. Of course, you pay for it in the long run. Same with film distribution. You know, you can take your film to a distributor. Hopefully, you know, you're going to take it to Cannes, you're going to take it to Berlin. Somebody's going to pick it up. They'll take that worry off your head. You'll just get free unencumbered cash. They'll take that thing. As I've suggested, these gatekeepers have a very narrow view of the world. Are they going to get you as a creative? Almost certainly not. They have very narrow views on what an audience wants and what an audience are. So the onus, the imperative, the need to understand and talk to those audiences, that's going to come down to you, right? So to go back to Philip Kotler, we've established what marketing isn't. This is Philip Kotler's model for what marketing actually is. And it's very, very much reduced to what these are known as the 4 Ps of marketing. Okay. And so simple one, price. You know, what are you going to be charging for what you're offering the audience? You know, is it going to be 10 quid for a DVD? Is it going to be 99p for a download? Sure, those are the prices of a commodity. People will happily pay more for a much deeper emotional experience. I'm not going to dwell too much on price, because it very much depends on the context of what your work is and how you're distributing it. But if you think about the fact that your film, you know, your indie film, your micro budget film is theoretically up against, you know, The Fast and the Furious or Dune or something with $100 million budget, have a little think. It doesn't mean your work is inferior, not by a long shot, not by a long shot. It means you need to think about how your audience is going to extract value, and why listening to you and connecting with you and becoming part of your community is going to be a much better experience for the same or more money. Place, there's another thing. It kind of relates to washing powder. You know, are you selling it in Costco, or are you selling it, you know, in a corner bodega? Place for you, by and large, as a creative, is the World Wide Web. It's the internet. You have to think about place and where you're going to sell your stuff if you're organizing a gig, if you're organizing a screening, if you're organizing something very local. But again, that's not massively something we're going to dwell on tonight when we're talking about what the significance of marketing is to you right now. Okay, we're going to talk first of all about what Kotler calls product, and then we're going to talk a little bit about promotion too. Product. Oh man, creatives hate the word product. All right, it's loathed. I suppose, you know, a parallel word that's lost significance is content. Generic content. You know, it's like porridge. It's like baby formula or something. However, in the context of marketing and in the context of what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, product is a term of art, and it has a very, very specific meaning, and it has a meaning that's relevant to you, because product doesn't mean a commodity. It means about the context of what you're doing. It means it's not just about the physical thing that you're delivering. There's a whole bunch of context to it, and I've got some good examples of that, right? This is often held up as one of the most effective and famous advertising campaigns ever. Probably before everybody's time. Jesus, is before my time. I'd like to buy the world a Coke. Now, what's Coke as a product? I drink a Coke Zero pretty much every day of my life for my lunch, but it is fizzy, sweet, brown water. That's what a Coke is. So, you know, that doesn't really do much to excite you, does it? It tastes all right. But if you've never had a Coke, you could, if it said, look at this, fizzy brown water, it's nice and sugary, you're not going to get excited about it. What they did with this advertising campaign that became so influential and so transformative, it actually ends up at the end of the fantastic series of Mad Men, in order to take the piss out of it, when Don Draper comes up with this idea in that fictional world. Very much of its time, early 70s, the hippie movement has a great deal of traction. People are feeling, the young people are feeling the power of this worldwide kind of community. So you have this beautiful selection of young people from all over the world with their kimonos or their African dress. And it creates an emotional aspect to the product. So suddenly the product that the Coke isn't a brown fizzy water. It's this feeling and this emotion that if you're drinking Coke, you are reaching out to all the people of the world, and you are part of this tribe, and you are part of these beautiful young people all singing together in perfect harmony. Is it bullshit? It is what it is. It's why Coke is very often regarded as the most valuable brand in the entire world. Here's another one. Mark Rothko, the American painter. This is one of his works, untitled, as most of them are. It's known as Yellow and Blue. Mark Rothko was an abstract expressionist, and as a painter, that means his work tries to transcend the literal. It tries to transcend being too straightforward. You could say that the product, much as Coke is what it is, you could say that the product of Untitled Yellow and Blue is a big ass bit of canvas, 2.5 meters tall by 1.5 meters, 1 3/4 meters wide. I mean, it's a big old canvas, right? So, you know, great. It's like a roll of wallpaper. It's going to cover a wall. How is Untitled Yellow and Blue an actual product? Well, the purpose of abstract expressionism is that what the abstract expressionists tried to do was distill pure emotion. You stand in front of this, you stand in front of big old Mark Rothko canvas, and you're going to feel something, and you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're not necessarily it's going to provoke an emotion in you, and probably in a way that the artist never necessarily intended. Can we divine what Rothko's emotions were when he was painting this canvas? Can we feel it? Is it a literal communication? Of course it isn't. The product exists only in the emotions that we create for it. Exactly like what I was saying about reception theory. Very, very powerful. And it's almost paradoxical, almost. This particular canvas sold a couple of years back for a little over $46 million to some hedge funder. Let that not detract from how powerful an emotional experience is. So what I'm trying to say here is product, not just a physical thing you're doing. There is this whole world of emotion that people are going to feel from what you're doing as a creative. And you need to kind of be in tune a little bit for that, because that's what your product is. So how and why will people connect with your work? We've just been thinking about what your work is and what it makes me feel. This is kind of coming on to the next P, which is promotion, is how do you communicate? How do you latch on to somebody so they start to feel something? So they start to feel what you intend them to feel, so they start to generate their own attachment to your work. Positioning. This is sometimes referred to as the fifth P. But your work is going to have a whole bunch of contexts to it. It's going to have a whole bunch of aspects to it that are potentially going to make it interesting, or potentially make it an empathetic, feeling, emotional reaction for somebody. You know, I've listed them up there. You'll all get the deck after this. It could be something very, very political. It could be something about your social context? Are you saying something about society? Are you saying something about ethnicity? Something about your own ethnic identity? Is it a local story? Is it, if people feel very proud about their locality, does this story have particular resonance for them? What's the genre? Genre is can be used as a bit of simplification, but it is a very easy way to communicate very, very quickly what your product is all about. Theme and story, of course, people are going to be interested in your theme and your story. I'm going to give you a word of warning. Phil, Grace, everybody from the team, we do a lot of pitch contests, and the number one fatal mistake of pitching is to be too literal in talking about your story and to trot out every detail of your narrative. That's much, much less effective than concentrating on what's different, what's punchy. So you're not telling them the story for them to remember it. You're telling them one or two punchy details so they're going to feel something. Talent, is there somebody they recognize in it? Huge. Social proof is a very, very primal aspect of human communication. Is there somebody they recognize because that, gives a handle, because you then have that person's emotion towards that person. If it's an actor that they warm to, that's immediately going to create a positive emotion. Gender is a story that is based around gender, or more broadly gender identity or sexual identity. That again is a potential aspect of your product that's going to have a lot of resonance for people. Is there an age band where your story, is it something for the TikTok generation? Is it something for the grey pound? Is it the Duke or a film like that? That's going to resonate with an older audience. So think about that. Source material. Does your source material have a following already? Are you coming from a comic book? Are you coming from even a style of comic book? Are you coming from a novel? Is your music, a homage or a reworking of something else? And similarly, style and aesthetic. So I've listed these aspects for you to go away and think about, one or two or three of those that make a very quick, instant way for you to talk about your work. You're not communicating the whole. You are going to, when you talk to people, and we'll get on to how you communicate with people in a minute, when you're talking to people, you want them to grab one or two or three ideas, very much like pitching. So it's a very useful exercise to break down your project that you're going to be talking about and you're going to be marketing. Think about those aspects of it. And again, I'm coming back to that. What do you want them to think? And of equal importance, what do you want them to feel? So crowdfunding, this is specifically about crowdfunding. I've tried to be quite general in how we're talking about marketing, because I think a lot of this is applicable to if you're going out to sell your finished work. But we've got real insight after the many, many hundreds of projects that we've dealt with and campaigns, and it can be quite instructive. Why do people support a crowdfunding project? And by looking at these, I think we can infer a few solutions and implications for creative marketing in general. Rewards. Everybody familiar with crowdfunding will know that you offer different tiers of rewards to your backers. A sneak preview of your film, you get to listen to the track, you get an HD FLAC 24-bit download of your track, you get to come to the backstage party after opening night. So all these kind of things are physical, practical rewards that are given in exchange for people's money. In reality, what you're selling is emotions. You get to see something first. That's going to make you feel special. That's going to make you feel like you're part of an elite as a backer. You get to see something before the rest of the world. You get to come to opening night. You get to go to that party and talk to the performers and talk to the director and have a drink with them. And that's amazing. You know, so many people that are outside the industry, those opportunities are few and far between. It invokes an emotion. It's exciting for people, okay? So when you think about your rewards, how are you going to excite people? You see behind the scenes. Again, you know, this is a fantastic thing. We often use the term muggles to talk about people that are outside the industry, but interested in the arts. And seeing the creative journey fascinates people, and it's emotional. It's become an emotional journey. I think, you know, crowdfunding campaigns can be very, very much like Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and then they've got a narrative, and you know, people want to help you at the beginning, and then they want to watch you, you know, kind of ascend the mountains, and then struggle, and then doubt yourself, and then come back again. That kind of insight behind the scenes into the practical process and to the creative process and what you're going through to birth this creative work, very, very effective on people. Prestige and patronage. This has been around since the days of the Medicis or the Roman emperors, right? People like to feel proud that they've given you something and supported your work. And it can veer into, it can feel a little bit like condescension, but in reality, you know, people can feel genuine pride in that they have played a little bit in, as I say, I use the term birthing this creative work. It's a feeling that non-creative people don't necessarily get. So if they can just feel a little bit of part of it, that they've made it happen, then that's something people take pride in. There's another emotion that can be very, very instructive when you're thinking about how you market stuff. Connection with the material. This is one of the bigger aspects. And in terms of those categories we've just talked about, and those hooks and those ideas that you might be able to extract to communicate with people quickly, this is going to find a home. Connection with the material. People will respond to that material if it's something they believe strongly in. And I won't go over that list again, but that connection and helping get the word out about that cause, about that issue, that is hugely, hugely powerful for people. Probably the most important one, probably the most important reason people support a project is because they like or connect with the artist themselves. It's very, very important to put yourself front and center as well. You know, to use the analogy of you're going up against the Fast and the Furious, you know, you've got, you know, Vin Diesel or Jason Statham or those kind of people. People feel they know them because they see them on the Graham Norton show, they see them interviewed, but do they have a connection with them? Yeah, slightly. You as an artist, people will be interested in what you're doing. And it's not about being Vin Diesel, it's about being honest and open and forthright. And don't forget, people sympathize with the artistic struggle. So how you pull your ideas and how you pull your work together, there's an emotional journey there. So what will motivate people most of all is if they feel they can connect to you. And the way to connect is by being open and honest, which feeds into the final thing. It's to be part of the journey. I guess actually that point ties up all the points that I've just made. It's about the us. It's not just about them and you, because at the point they decide to back you, you've become a unit, you've become a community, you're working in tandem to get this thing happening. Recognize that and you'll go a long way. You'll go a long way to keeping those people on your side, and guess what? Make them feel part of the us. They'll come back for the next project and the project after that. And then when you're, you know, when you're touring with Ed Sheeran or when you're premiering in the Odeon Leicester Square, those people are going to have felt part of that journey and they will feel shining pride. Think about that at this very early stage when you're initially starting to market your work. So the process of communication, and it is a process. Promotion. Again, you know, I hark back to people thinking that a so-called influencer with 1 million followers on a social media platform can drop your name and suddenly you're going to become very famous. That will take you so far. That takes you to the very first stage, which is awareness. People need to know about you. People need to know what you're doing. but it's not enough. So at the bottom of this slide, we've got a couple of numbers. We've got a couple of numbers that we borrowed from academic marketing sources and traditional marketing. The first one is the ratio, 10 to 3 to 1. And if you look below, we've got 3 terms that are used again in traditional sales. It's known as a sales funnel. It might sound a bit cynical to start to categorize people in that kind of thing, but we've reframed it for crowdfunding, for creative work. You know, nobody's going to see a single post and go, wow, I absolutely have to, you know, drop £1,000 supporting that project. They start off as a lead, and you will have 10 leads. Once they're aware of you, you've got to engage them. They've got to start to find something interesting in what you're doing. You've got to start to affect them emotionally. You've got to make them think, and you've got to make them feel. That's that part of the process called engagement. In traditional sales funnel verbance, it's known as somebody becoming a prospect. So you know and you recognize that they're interested in what you're doing because you're engaging. They're not a sales prospect. You're literally, it's engagement. It starts to become a communication, and you're going to listen to them and they're going to listen to you. And that's how you're going to start to really cement this community. And then the final stage is becoming a backer, what's known in sales parlance as a conversion. So a backer, or I guess you could also say a purchaser. If you're marketing a finished product, they're going to be a conversion, a sale, if you like. And traditional wisdom is that you see them in this ratio, 10 to 3 to 1. So for every 10 people that are aware of what you're doing, 3 of them will be engaged enough to think about it or feel something about it or talk to you about it. And that's going to translate into 1 backer, 1 sale. Now, these ratios don't completely hold true, but it's a pretty good guideline. And when you get out there marketing, particularly if you're doing this guerrilla marketing, particularly if you're doing personal marketing with this kind of intensity, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs, right? And a lot of people will you know, might have this ambivalence about what you're doing. Hang in there, because for every 10, you're going to get down to 3 people who are interested. And you're going to get 1 person at the very end out of that 10 who gets it, who really gets it and is really going to become part of your community. The other stat down the bottom is called the effective frequency. And this is a reference to the psychological effect, the number of times you need to see something, whether that's a meme, whether that's a product, whether that's an advert, whether that's, you know, something on the side of a bus. That's the number of times you need to see something before it becomes a thing in your mind, before it's become something that is registered. And obviously, you know, it depends a lot on context. This is 6 times is the old-fashioned advertising ratio. There's a lot of academic research that says in this day of social media, when we are doom scrolling and we are overloaded with inputs and information, it can become up to 20 times before you have to see something, before it becomes a thing in your mind. That's the effective frequency, the frequency you have to see something before it becomes effective. I'm including that here. Again, just hang in there and don't be afraid to be repetitive. Don't be afraid to talk again and again and again about what you're doing, because the 9 that drop off or the 7 that drop off doesn't matter. They're not going to think anything less of you. This is about persistence, and it's a numbers game. And the more you get out there and the more you put into this, the higher numbers on the left of that chart through to the higher numbers on your right, how people are going to become part of your community right there. Promotion exists in a variety of different contexts. You are going to be talking about your work in these and many variations of these contexts. You know, how long does it take to make a film? It could take, you know, 2-3 years to come to fruition, longer. So you're going to have a lot of time to talk about this, and you're going to be talking about it in different ways, and you need to understand how these contexts affect your promotion. So at the very least, you're going to have your tagline, and we'll be doing a specific pitching session later on, but a tagline is cementing your work into one quick easy sentence that's going to get people's attention. Slightly expanded on that, you're going to have an elevator pitch. So called because if you get in an elevator pitch, if you get in an elevator with somebody and you've got 30 seconds to pitch them before they get off of their floor, you're going to get 3 or 4 sentences. So again, have this ready for different concepts. If you've identified your themes way back in that earlier slide, you know, say for example, you've identified that your work is about a 60-year-old trans woman in Yorkshire. There's 3 contexts for you. So whoever you're speaking to, which of those points is going to be interesting to them? Which of those points you think they're going to latch onto? You don't have to put everything in every pitch. You may have to, you know, the more succinct you can be in these smaller ones, the better. Similarly, a one-pager, that again is an industry standard. People hand out a one-pager. You've got 3-4 paragraphs to talk about what you're doing. Don't try and cram everything in. Think about what's relevant. Think of which of those hooks are going to work. You may be communicating in a trailer or a proof of concept video or crowdfunding video. It's absolutely mandatory. We insist and demand that you have a between 2.5 and 4 minute video on your crowdfunding campaign page, because that's the grammar, that's the medium people are expecting to see up there. You know, similarly, you can distribute this in smaller formats, 30 seconds on TikTok, 1 minute on Twitter or Facebook, 2 minutes on Facebook, right? Again, don't lose sight of what emotions you want to inspire in other people and how it relates to the story that you're telling. Trailers, again, do not literally tell the whole story. They have questions, they ask questions. There are specific editors in Soho, specific edit houses that do nothing but edit trailers because it is a punchy, specific form, not a condensed version of your creative work as a whole. So if that's the context you're pitching in, boil it down again. It's another repurposing of what you're all about. 20-minute pitch meeting. Again, you know, a Hollywood classic. You will have 10 or 15 minutes or so to talk about your formula, and then you will you know, do Q&As. We do these in business all the time. This interestingly is a very interesting lecture really giving, because I'm raising money for us as a business from angel investors and VCs. So I'm doing these myself. It's hard, right? But it's a context, you know, rehearse this, think about this. If you're going into one, prepare for it, think about what's relevant. Finally, the biggest, longest pitch of all, 30-day crowdfunding campaign. Throughout 30 days of a crowdfunding campaign, you're telling a story, and you are telling it in multiple media. You're telling it over social media. You're telling it in email. You're telling it when you meet people in a pub. You're telling it in a written form. You're telling it in your video. So the point I'm trying to make here is you've got 30 days. So you've got time to focus on different aspects of promotion, different bits of the story that you're going to tell, perhaps to different audiences, perhaps to different segments. None of these things is the same. None of these things is an expanded version of the other. So before you go out to promotion, to do promotion, think about all these different versions that you are going to have to prepare. Hopefully in a few weeks' time, we'll be having the great Bob Schultz of London Screenwriters Festival to talk about pitching specifically. He's very, very good on these. I heartily recommend for those of you yet to meet Bob. Promotional channels, again, you know, these have different grammar, which affects the way in which you're going to talk about them. You can do paid advertising. This is previously regarded as something being you know, pretty limited, because you're not competing with Universal or Warner Brothers, and you're not buying posters on the sides of bus. You know, you're not buying an advert during, you know, I'm a celebrity. It can be very effective because of the micro targeting that is available with social media right now, and with Google. You know, paid ads, you can very narrowly identify the people that you wish to communicate with. And if you've already done your homework and thought about the positioning and thought about how you're going to communicate, this can be a very, very effective tool for, 10 quid. And they all do vouchers and coupons and discount deals. We literally had a conversation this morning because we were offered a free bunch of advertising on Instagram. We decided against it for the simple reason that we hadn't prepared and we hadn't done the preparation that I'm suggesting you do in those earlier slides, right? Get ready. There will be a time in your campaign when paid advertising works. Social media, very, very misunderstood. It is not merely a broadcast medium. It is not about you chucking something up or having a so-called influencer chuck it out the once. It is a two-way communication. Think back to what I've just been saying about how you make that conversion and and engage somebody and turn them into a backer. That is a two-way communication. That is what you should be thinking about within your social media strategy. One-way communications does not work. Find people, identify them, talk to them, face-to-face and virtual events. I mean, look, if you've got your elevator pitch down, face-to-face and giving somebody a business card, giving them somebody a sticker with a QR code, very, very powerful because it's significant. They've already met you and they've already formed an opinion about you. And if they've stood talking to you long enough to hear your pitch, they might like you. They might like you. Virtual events. Here we are, we're sat in one. And what you may or may not have realized is that you're actually sitting in a piece of marketing for Greenlit. It's a very good piece of marketing, I hope, and I hope you'll agree with me, and I hope you're getting some value out of it, because the thinking is that you've come and you've listened to me, and you're going to come away and learn something, and you're also going to form an impression of me and of Phil and of the rest of the team, that we know what we're talking about, that we've thought about the issues involved in your crowdfunding campaign. We've thought about the issues involved in marketing, and the advice that we can bring to bear if you bring a project to us is going to be quite sophisticated. You will not get the opportunity to sit down with the CEO of Kickstarter. He will not talk to you like this. He will not be fielding your questions at the end. And I mean, my gosh, we're at an hour. I hope nobody's in a rush to leave. I'm just getting into my groove here. But hopefully, you will have formed an opinion. You will have formed an emotion about Greenlit, and hopefully it's the correct emotion, that we do care. That's not a pretense. That's us telling you what we're all about. So can you do a virtual event around your work? Can it be a virtual gig? Can it be a screening? Can it be a Q&A? All of these things are very, very powerful for getting people to like you and to approve of you. Social proof. Can you get people talking about you? So, can you get people to tell their friends? I said this at the top of the session. If you like this and you appreciate this, tell your friends about Greenlit U, because it means a lot to us, and it will mean a lot. That social proof, that recommendation coming from you is very, very powerful, more powerful than seeing something for the first time. If somebody recommends something, hugely powerful. Email marketing is a great tool. It is in terms of crowdfunding, it is number one in terms of conversion over social media every time. Assemble your mailing list when you're marketing. Again, we'll get into the weeds on later sessions of Greenlit U, where we're talking specifically about the practicalities of promotion. But email is huge. So if you're thinking about starting a campaign, start thinking about who you're going to email. Do not spam, because spam will induce a negative emotion in the people you're approaching. Think of it as starting a conversation and personalizing it and thinking, why is this person going to be into what I'm doing? And tailor your email, even if it's not somebody you don't know particularly well, even if it's somebody you don't know. A personalized email can be incredibly useful. Can you get on a podcast? Can you get on guest blogs where you talk about how passionate you are, what your project is all about? Similarly, video content. Can you even produce your own video content that manipulates this? We advise, if you're putting a crowdfunding campaign together, start planning to drop video content very, very frequently throughout the course of your 30 days. And it can be, if you're talking about the example I just made up earlier about a 60-year-old trans woman in Yorkshire, can you produce content that's of interest to the trans community? Can you have work that's of interest to the older community? Can you have interest video content that's of interest to the Yorkshire community, like with Jeff Boycott, Cups of Tea on, right? Think about it and plan it, because that's a way you can invoke emotion and get people to be interested and get people to like and laugh or be frightened or you know, feel the kind of emotions that you need to communicate for an effective campaign. Wow, I'm talked out. I'm going to come to a few conclusions here, and I have borrowed from literature. I have borrowed from literature for it. This is To a Louse by famous Scots poet Rabbie Burns, and I will not insult you nor the Scottish nation by trying to read this out, but what I will do is translate it. I want some power. If only God would give us the gift to see ourselves as others see us. And that's what I've been talking about. When you're starting to plan the marketing campaign for your work, have a bit of detachment, step outside, try and see yourselves as others would see you. It would, for many a blunder, free us and foolish notion. It would stop you making mistakes, and it would stop you having wrong ideas about how to go about it. That is a fantastic quote for marketers. Minimizing mistakes by stepping outside and thinking about your work with a little bit of objectivity. Veronika Tugaleva, very topical, the queer woman Ukrainian poet and author. And what Veronika says is that there's nothing more beautiful than authenticity. There's nothing stronger than vulnerability. This taps into what I'm saying about people back people. Your work can exist on paper, it can exist in a bit of video content, but what really gives it context, what really gives it power is you as a creative and where it's coming from inside, and to be authentic and to be vulnerable and to be open is magical. It's magical for creatives to do. So when you're talking, bear that in mind. Really, really powerful. And Veronika says there's no better time than now. So don't think that this is something artificial that you're going to do down the line. This is something you can start doing now. Think about yourself. You are a creator. You create things for a reason. You have something to say about the world. And there will be thousands of people out there who really, really want to hear that. The more open you are, start feeling open about what you're doing now. We're going to finish up. Promoting your work is hard, and it will involve a lot of slog. And going back to, you know, those magical ratios of sales, it's going to be repetitive, and it can be humbling or fatiguing or just not very fun to do. But Teddy Roosevelt has it, and I am going to read this one out. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man, or woman, obviously, who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly. And if you take that attitude out to your marketing and how you are going to get in people's faces and reveal yourself and expose yourself and make yourself vulnerable, then you're going to become the one that strives valiantly, and your campaign will be a success. Wow. I hope everybody's managed to take some practical and some motivational value for that. As I said, it was pretty much a slightly theoretical, slightly abstracted way of talking about marketing, but I really hope I've got you all starting to think about marketing in a different way and how it relates to what you're doing as a creative and your work. Let's go. There's no time limit. We're all here. Thank you all so much for coming. Hit me up with your questions.
Yes, hi.
How you doing? Thank you for joining.
No, thank you for the very informative evening. I mean, it's been an eye-opener for me.
Oh, I'm pleased. I'm pleased. I'm glad you got something out of it.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I've actually been I've done like worked on 2 short films of my own, and my second film is has been screened on about 6 film festivals and won an award as well.
Congratulations, great.
No, thank you. But I'm actually I've been working on writing a pilot for a series that I want to work on.
Okay.
And it's before this, I did a course with script writing course with John York.
Oh yeah.
And he's actually so he's actually really liked some of the work that I've written, especially because I'm actually specializing in writing on Hindu mythology.
Okay.
but in a Western narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm at the moment I'm writing to do musical theatre, a theatrical show, but that is something I've done differently, and I'm actually doing something for a series,
Okay.
which is going to be differently done for screen. So I'm looking at doing a crowdfund for that. And,
Okay.
yeah. So I was just wondering if I could email you, Phil, if you know, with more details, and maybe you could guide me on how I could start, you know, the actual, you
Love
know,
to. Yeah,
yeah.
love to. This is entirely, you know, what we're here for. So if you just, you know, send it to info@greenlit.com, and we'll get that, and then one of us, probably Grace, who I think is in the room, but she's our head of community. She'll pop back and just talk you through a few of the practicalities. But
Right. Okay.
absolutely,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
pleasure, Harish. Yeah. And
Okay.
I hope you come back for some more sessions too.
I will. Thank you.
And I was, you know, to tease out what Harish was saying there. So that's very interesting. I mean, what I, you know, sort of took away and might be teased out, you know, Hindu mythology. We've seen, you know, in recent years, a lot of African inspired work. In fact, one of my colleagues, friends in this co-working space right here sits at the desk over there, or used to sit over the desk right there. He's got a bit too big. He just sold one of his comic books to Disney, so he doesn't hang out with us anymore. But it was very much taking you know, stories from African mythology and reworking them in a modern contemporary comic book format and style in a way that would appeal, you know, not purely to African audiences, but also to, you know, British audiences and then American. Shy away from using the term Western. So, you know, that's potentially very interesting. And I've seen certain projects like that from China as well, but I'm yet to see something from the Hindu tradition. So
Yeah, this is why I feel I decided to do this, because I have been reading a lot of the mythology for a couple of years, and what I've noticed as well while I was in India is that it's really a very ancient sort of civilization that were very, very advanced, you know, and people don't know about the you know, the amazing you know, even the structures that are still standing in India today,
yeah,
which baffles scientists all over the world, and you know how they did it. So the science behind that, and there's so much people don't know about where things such as, you know, yoga and all these other things that, you know, the Western world today know about, but they don't know where it actually comes from.
yeah,
And you know, the heritage is so rich. And I said, well, and I've also studied for many years how these other mythology, the stories of mythologies of around the world, like the Norse mythologies, do really well. I've
absolutely,
always
yeah. I
wondered
mean,
why hasn't anybody touched Hindu mythology?
yeah,
I mean, the Indian companies are doing it, but so to say that, you know, they're not doing it very well. Yeah, and they cater it to their, you know, the community in
yeah,
itself. And what I want to do is I want to show it to the world. So even my cast are going to be diverse,
yeah,
you know, from
yeah.
different backgrounds, and you know, hope to get my crew in the same way. So this is
So
what I
yeah,
really want to do.
really,
Yeah.
it really seems like it's more for the Indian diaspora, whether that's here or the States or South Africa or the world over, rather than it is for you know, for that huge domestic market. Anyway, yeah, get in touch.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Anybody else got a
Yeah,
question?
we've got 2 questions in the chat now.
Okay, cool.
So
Right.
in the order they arrived, Elias asked, I'm not 100% clear how Greenlit differs to some of the other crowdfunding sites such as Kickstarter, Seed and Spark, Indiegogo. Would you elaborate on this?
I would very definitely elaborate. And that's an excellent question. So for a start, we only do creative stuff. And as I say, you know, one of the drawbacks of those, you know, the big sites, well, by particular, I mean, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they are very, very much commoditized, and you will probably get lost. One of the, I can't remember, I mentioned this in the seminar, but one of the statistics is that only 5% of pledges comes from the site itself. So our ethos is we will give you more support, we will give you more training. Training is perhaps not the quite word, but you know, we will give you feedback. We will help you construct your campaign. We will point out to you on a one-to-one basis what works and what doesn't. And we all work extremely hard, especially Grace and Phil. We work extremely hard to do that, because to look at the counterpoint of that number, if we can make your campaign 10% better than you would without our support, that's a win for us. So I'd also say, you know, we have specialized knowledge. We're a learning organization, and we have realized that the relationship between a creative and their audience is a very special kind of relationship. And I've tried to allude to how that relationship develops and is formed in tonight's seminar. You know, we have an understanding of that perhaps other platforms don't do, and we're willing to share that with you. So hopefully you're going to get a better campaign out of it. I would say hats off, hat tip to Seed and Spark, big influence on us when we were building the product. If you're based in the USA, they may even be the best choice for you right now. We're just literally, as we speak, rolling out our US product for US based producers. Seed and Spark only work in the USA and Canada, but they're very good as well. Not as good as us, obviously. Finally, we're also developing much more of a marketplace. So we were quite inspired by Bandcamp, which obviously just sold for a huge amount of money and has just become part of a big corporation. But a question we're asking is, you know, why is there no Bandcamp for filmmakers? Why is there no Bandcamp for theatre makers? There is a Bandcamp for musicians, but, you know, so we're hoping to offer a whole bunch more services like video on demand, transactional video on demand. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So if that has piqued your interest, get in touch with one of us and we'll happily talk about how that may or may not fit your project. Thank you, Elias, I believe. Yes, Elias, thank you.
Next question is from David. It's a very good question. How far in advance of your campaign should you start talking about your project? Weeks, months, a year?
There, you know, there is no upper limit. I mean, you know, start talking about your project as soon as you can. So you know, people hear about it and people are familiar with it. We like to have a campaign come to us about 2 months before they're ready to go. And that gives us a couple of weeks, few weeks. We encourage you, we'll tell you, you know, what needs to be delivered when. You're going to need to put together a whole bunch of assets, video material, visual material. You're going to need to write your page. You're going to need to have an outreach strategy. You know, if you don't have those things, you know, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, right? If you don't have those things, your campaign will be weakened. So coming to us without those things too near to your projected launch date is you're going to struggle. If you've got that stuff, sure, I would probably say 3 or 4 weeks is the minimum that we could start a campaign, unless if you've got a lot of that stuff already prepared. 2 months is optimal, but you can start talking it. You can start working on your, you know, whether that's lookbooks or storyboards or mood boards. You can start talking about stuff if you're doing casting, if you're doing recce's, if you're doing test shoots. Share that stuff on your social media and start talking about it as soon as you like. In terms of structured communication, structured marketing, a couple of months is optimal. 2 weeks, yeah, let's say 2 weeks is the minimum we go with. Is that good, David? That answer it?
Great. I think that catches us up on the questions in the comments. Anyone have anything else they want to throw in? David says yes, that answers his question.
Okay, perfect. Not yes, he's got more questions to ask. All right, that's cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up then. Look, thanks everyone for joining. Again, I really sincerely hope that it's been useful and it's just given you a little bit of a different way to think about stuff. Come back for more Greenlit U. We will have much more in-depth practicalities. If you answered that question I asked at the top of the show, if you thought that marketing was, you know, promotion and selling and advertising, we've got specific modules coming up on all those things. But hopefully tonight has been productive and given you an insight into how we do things and how we try and be different here at Greenlit. So thanks for coming and hope to see you very soon.